ค ไปแข่งที่ต่างประเทศนานๆคิดถึงบ้านบ้างไหมครับ
คิดถึง
เวลาที่ได้กลับบ้านคิดถึงความร่มเย็นสบายอยู่มุมไหนก็ยิ้มได้
คิดถึงรอยยิ้มมีคนที่ทำให้เราหายเหนื่อยเวลาหิวก็อิ่มท้องอิ่มใจ
คิดถึงเวลาได้หยุดพักได้อยู่กับเพื่อนๆได้นั่งเล่นมองท้องฟ้าไปเรื่อย
ๆคิดถึงเวลาที่ได้เอนตัวทิ้งเรื่องวุ่นวายข้างนอกชาร์จพลังเต็มที่คิดถึงทุกเวลาที่ได้กลับม
ากลับมาทำให้ป่าชุ่มชื้นสมัยก่อนไม่มีน้ำป่านี้แล้งมีฝายมีน้ำก็มีป่าก
ลับมามีอยู่มีกินมีน้ำมีป่าก็มีกิน
กลับมาอุดมสมบูรณ์เห็นป่าต้นโกงกลางหญ้าทะเลอยู่กันอุดมสมบูรณ์ก็ดีใจครับเขาเป็นแหล่งอนุบาลแหล่งอาหารให้สัตว์เยอะแยะเลย
กลับมามีบ้านปะการังก็เหมือนบ้านของปลามีบ้านปลาอยู่ได้เราก็มีระบบนิเวศที่สมบูรณ์ครับ
ไม่มีน้ำไม่มีบ้านของป่า
ไม่มีป่าไม่มีบ้านของสัตว์น้อยใหญ่
ไม่มีสัตว์น้อยใหญ่ไม่มีระบบนิเวศที่ดี
ไม่มีธรรมชาติที่สมบูรณ์ไม่มีบ้านของเราบ้านใครใครก็รักจึงว่าโลกก็เหมือนบ้านนะเป็นบ้านหลังใหญ่ด้วยมาดูแลบ้านหลังนี้ในแบบที่ทุกคนทำได้ไปด้วยกันนะคะ
SCG Passion for Better
โลกร้อนไม่ใช่แค่อากาศที่ร้อนขึ้นแต่มันคือสภาพอากาศที่แปรปรวนผิดเพี้ยนไปจากเดิมมากอย่างที่อเมริกาเพิ่งเจอพายุทอร์นาโดและยังมีคลื่นความร้อนรุนแรงที่ทำให้คนเสียชีวิตเพิ่มมากขึ้นทุกปี
เมย์เป็นคนรักธรรมชาติมากค่ะการได้อยู่กับธรรมชาติคือการรีเฟรชที่ดีที่สุดเราไม่อยากเสียสิ่งที่เรารักไปและไม่อยากให้ภัยธรรมชาติมาเป็นฝันร้ายที่คอยคุกคามเรามากขึ้นเรื่อย
ๆถ้าโลกมันร้อน
ก็ต้องช่วยกันลด
วิธีที่เราจะลดสภาวะโลกร้อนสำคัญที่สุดคือการปลูกต้นไม้โกงกลางเนี่ยเป็นซูเปอร์ฮีโร่ของพื้นที่ป่าชายเลนเลยล่ะซึ่งมีคุณสมบัติดูดซับก๊าซคาร์บอนถึง3 เท่าของต้นไม้บนดินเริ่มต้นจากใบมาที่กิ่งก้านลงมาถึงลำต้นลงไปถึงรากและลงไปถึงพื้นดินต้นไม้หรือต้นโกงกลางที่ปลูกในพื้นที่ป่าชายเลนของเราทุกต้นประชาชนในพื้นที่จะร่วมด้วยช่วยกันดูแลอย่างแน่นอนคุณปลูกต้นไม้จะกลับมาปกป้องคุณกลับมาดูแลคุณ
เรา2 คน4 มืออาจจะปลูกได้ไม่กี่ต้นแต่ถ้าร่วมมือกันหลายๆคนจะยิ่งลดโลกร้อนได้มากขึ้น
มาช่วยกันปลูกลดร้อนเพื่อโลกของเรากันนะคะ
SCG Passion for Better
จีนพี่พร้อมแล้วไปกัน
ไปไหนจีนเนี่ยนะว่างเมื่อไหร่ต้องมาชาร์จแบตที่ทะเลได้ดำน้ำดูปะการังได้ดูปลาสวยๆเลิฟเลย
ที่ดูข่าวมาเขาว่าโลกร้อนน้ำทะเลก็จะร้อนขึ้นปะการังเริ่มตายพายุเต่าทะเลสัตว์ทะเลหลายชนิดก็จะอยู่กันไม่ได้ด้วย
ถ้าโลกมันร้อน
ก็ต้องช่วยกันลด
โลกประกอบด้วยพื้นน้ำถึง3 ส่วนพืชที่อยู่ในทะเลก็สามารถกักเก็บก๊าซคาร์บอนไดออกไซด์ได้มากที่เราเรียกว่าบลูคาร์บอนหญ้าทะเลกักเก็บได้มากกว่าพืชบนบกถึง4 เท่าและปลดปล่อยออกซิเจนออกมาส่วนของรากก็ไปดูดซับคาร์บอนที่ละลายในพื้นดินใต้ทะเลหญ้าทะเลยังเป็นแหล่งอาหารของสัตว์ทะเลหายากหลายชนิดและก็ยังเป็นแหล่งอาศัยของสัตว์น้ำไวอ่อนให้ชาวบ้านทำการประมงได้ต่อไป
มาช่วยกันปลูก
เพื่อปกป้องทะเลที่เรารักโลกไม่ร้อนทะเลไม่ร้อนถ้าช่วยกันปลูกลดร้อนตั้งแต่วันนี้
ตอนนี้ไทยอยู่อันดับ 8 ของโลกจากการจัดอันดับประเทศที่ได้รับผลกระทบจากภาวะโลกร้อน
หน้าร้อนที่ผ่านมาเนี่ยบ้านเราก็แรงที่สุดในรอบ40 ปีเกษตรกรที่พึ่งพาลมฟ้าอากาศเนี่ยเขาก็ใช้ชีวิตกันลำบากมากถ้าโลกมันร้อน
ก็ต้องช่วยกันลด
ปัจจัยสำคัญในการเลือกปลูกต้นไม้ท้องสำรวจพื้นที่ว่าต้นไม้ท้องถิ่นมีอะไรบ้างเขาจะเหมาะสมกับพื้นที่ตรงนั้นก็เปรียบเสมือนคนจะไม่มีการปรับตัวเลยแล้วเขาจะเป็นต้นไม้ที่เติบโตได้เร็ว
จริงๆแล้วต้นไม้ยังต้องการที่ปลูกอยู่เพื่อลดโลกร้อนเป็นปอดให้พวกเราได้หายใจปลูกแค่คนละต้นเราจะได้มีป่าเพิ่มขึ้น
หลังจากปลูกแล้วเราจะดูแลให้เขารอดและเติบโตเป็นต้นไม้ที่จะสู้การเปลี่ยนแปลงของสภาพอากาศ
เลือกต้นที่ใช่จะปลูกที่ไหนก็ช่วยลดร้อนได้เริ่มปลูกวันนี้เพื่อโลกที่เย็นลงในวันพรุ่งนี้
SCG Passion for Better
Vårt förslag till innovationstävlingen Infralighter Awards har vi döpt till Bifrost. Teamet bakom bron är konstruktörer, arkitekter och landskapsarkitekter förankrade i innovativa mindre kontor i samarbete med Kungliga Tekniska högskolan och Stockholms stad som behovsägare. Men bron är utvecklad för att passa i många olika kontexter, även i mindre kommuner. Generellt är efterfrågan från kommunerna stort på nya lösningar för broar för att kunna nå klimatmålen. Broar har även stor potential att bidra till gestaltande och rumskapande kvaliteter i det offentliga rummet. Bron är en gång- och cykelbro, volymmässigt konstruerad till över 90% i naturens lättaste konstruktionsmaterial, trä. Det ger en bro med 40 meter spännvidd en vikt på under 20 ton. Brons relativa lätthet gör även angörningen mer flexibel. Fundamenten skulle till exempel kunna utgöras av naturstensblock eller gabiljoner av återvunnen sprängsten. Även om trä är återbrukbart och koldioxidneutralt så är skogen en resurs vi bör hantera varsamt, varför mycket arbete har fokuserats på att minimera materialanvändandet och utveckla smarta lösningar för att optimera möjligheten till underhåll och ökad livslängd, samt möjligheten till återbruk. Det här har givit en modulär konstruktion med flertalet parallella bärande element där varje element vid behov enkelt kan bytas ut utan att bron behöver demonteras eller stängas av under en längre tid. För att ytterligare underlätta underhåll och minska kostnader och uppförandetid består bron av korta standarddimensioner. Det gör att de ingående delarna i bron lätt kan hanteras med mankraft och finns tillgängliga i det vanliga byggsortimentet. Det öppnar även möjligheten att jobba med återbruk av tidigare använda träelement från till exempel gjutformar. Stål används i strategiska lägen för att ta dragkrafter för ökad livslängd och flexibilitet samt snabbt montage. Vi har utvecklat en enkel knutpunkt som är applicerbar på samtliga möten mellan träelementen i bron. Knutpunkten har dessutom potential att tillverkas i stora upplagor och användas vid en mängd olika brokonstruktioner. Ytterligare en innovation är att använda TRP-plåt som bärverk för farbanan. TRP-plåten i kombination med tvärgående slitplank stabiliserar bron och skyddar underliggande tvärbalkar. Likt regnbågen i mytologin kan vår bifrost lätt anpassas till en mängd olika hinder och spännvidder beroende på det specifika behovet för platsen. Utöver träets goda inverkan på miljön har det dessutom en lugnande och stressreducerande effekt på vår hjärna, vilket i kombination med en harmonisk gestaltning gör att det interiöra rummet upplevs ombonat och tryggt. Belysningen är integrerad mellan de parallella bärverken för att slippa ytterligare belysningsstolpar. Tack vare användning av standarddimensioner, smarta och flexibla knutpunkter och den höga andelen trä så är bron 100% återbrukbar i sin helhet eller var del för sig i en ny kontext och kan därför med sitt smäckra uttryck potentiellt förgylla många platser i framtiden.
ไปแข่งที่ต่างประเทศนานๆคิดถึงบ้านบ้างไหมครับ
คิดถึง
คิดถึง คิดถึง คิดถึง คิดถึงเวลาที่ได้กลับบ้าน คิดถึงความร่มเย็น สบาย อยู่มุมไหนก็ยิ้มได้
คิดถึงรอยยิ้ม มีคนที่ทำให้เราหายเหนื่อย เวลาหิวก็อิ่มท้องอิ่มใจ
คิดถึงเวลาได้หยุดพัก ได้อยู่กับเพื่อนๆ ได้นั่งเล่น มองท้องฟ้าไปเรื่อย
ๆ คิดถึงเวลาที่ได้เอนตัว ทิ้งเรื่องวุ่นวายข้างนอก ชาร์จพลังเต็มที่ คิดถึงทุกเวลาที่ได้กลับม
ากลับมาทำให้ป่าชุ่มชื้น สมัยก่อนไม่มีน้ำป่านี้แล้ง มีฝายมีน้ำก็มีป่าก
ลับมามีอยู่มีกิน มีน้ำมีปลาก็มีกิน
กลับมาอุดมสมบูรณ์เห็นป่าต้นโกงกลางหญ้าทะเลอยู่กันอุดมสมบูรณ์ก็ดีใจครับเขาเป็นแหล่งอนุบาลแหล่งอาหารให้สัตว์เยอะแยะเลย
กลับมามีบ้านปะการังก็เหมือนบ้านของปลามีบ้านปลาอยู่ได้ เราก็มีระบบนิเวศที่สมบูรณ์ครับ
ไม่มีน้ำไม่มีบ้านของป่า
ไม่มีป่าไม่มีบ้านของสัตว์น้อยใหญ่
ไม่มีสัตว์น้อยใหญ่ ไม่มีระบบนิเวศที่ดี
ไม่มีธรรมชาติที่สมบูรณ์ ไม่มีบ้านของเรา บ้านใครๆก็รักจึงว่าโลกก็เหมือนบ้านนะ เป็นบ้านหลังใหญ่ด้วย มาดูแลบ้านหลังนี้ในแบบที่ทุกคนทำได้ไปด้วยกันนะคะ
SCG Passion for Better
โลกร้อนไม่ใช่แค่อากาศที่ร้อนขึ้น แต่มันคือสภาพอากาศที่แปรปรวนผิดเพี้ยนไปจากเดิมมาก อย่างที่อเมริกาเพิ่งเจอพายุทอร์นาโดและยังมีคลื่นความร้อนรุนแรงที่ทำให้คนเสียชีวิตเพิ่มมากขึ้นทุกปี
เมย์เป็นคนรักธรรมชาติมากค่ะ การได้อยู่กับธรรมชาติคือการรีเฟรชที่ดีที่สุด เราไม่อยากเสียสิ่งที่เรารักไปและไม่อยากให้ภัยธรรมชาติมาเป็นฝันร้ายที่คอยคุกคามเรามากขึ้นเรื่อยๆ
ถ้าโลกมันร้อน
ก็ต้องช่วยกันลด
วิธีที่เราจะลดสภาวะโลกร้อนสำคัญที่สุดคือการปลูกต้นไม้โกงกลางเป็นซูเปอร์ฮีโร่ของพื้นที่ป่าชายเลนเลยล่ะซึ่งมีคุณสมบัติดูดซับก๊าซคาร์บอนถึง3เท่าของต้นไม้บนดินเริ่มต้นจากใบมาที่กิ่งก้านลงมาถึงลำต้นลงไปถึงรากและลงไปถึงพื้นดินต้นไม้หรือต้นโกงกลางที่ปลูกในพื้นที่ป่าชายเลนของเราทุกต้นประชาชนในพื้นที่จะร่วมด้วยช่วยกันดูแลอย่างแน่นอนคุณปลูกต้นไม้แต่กลับมาปกป้องคุณกลับมาดูแลคุณ
เรา2 คน4 มืออาจจะปลูกได้ไม่กี่ต้นแต่ถ้าร่วมมือกันหลายๆคนจะยิ่งลดโลกร้อนได้มากขึ้น
มาช่วยกันปลูกลดร้อนเพื่อโลกของเรากันนะคะ
SCG Passion for Better
จีนพี่พร้อมแล้วไปกัน
ไปไหน จีนน่ะนะว่างเมื่อไหร่ต้องมาชาร์จแบตที่ทะเลได้ดำน้ำดูปะการังได้ดูปลาสวยๆเลิฟเลย
ที่ดูข่าวมาเขาว่าโลกร้อนน้ำทะเลก็จะร้อนขึ้นปะการังเริ่มตายพายุนเต่าทะเลสัตว์ทะเลหลายชนิดก็จะอยู่กันไม่ได้ด้วย
ถ้าโลกมันร้อน
ก็ต้องช่วยกันลด
โลกประกอบด้วยพื้นน้ำถึง3ส่วนพืชที่อยู่ในทะเลก็สามารถกักเก็บก๊าซคาร์บอนไดออกไซด์ได้มากที่เราเรียกว่ารูคาร์บอนหญ้าทะเลกักเก็บได้มากกว่าพืชบนบกถึง4 เท่าและปลดปล่อยออกซิเจนออกมาส่วนของรากก็ไปดูดซับคาร์บอนที่ละลายในพื้นดินใต้ทะเลหญ้าทะเลยังเป็นแหล่งอาหารของสัตว์ทะเลหายากหลายชนิดและก็ยังเป็นแหล่งอาศัยของสัตว์น้ำไวอ่อนให้ชาวบ้านทำการประมงได้ต่อไป
มาช่วยกันปลูก พื่อปกป้องทะเลที่เรารัก
โลกไม่ร้อนทะเลไม่ร้อนถ้าช่วยกันปลูกลดร้อนตั้งแต่วันนี้
ตอนนี้ไทยอยู่อันดับ 8 ของโลกจากการจัดอันดับประเทศที่ได้รับผลกระทบจากภาวะโลกร้อน
หน้าร้อนที่ผ่านมาเนี่ยบ้านเราก็แรงที่สุดในรอบ 40 ปี เกษตรกรที่พึ่งพาลมฟ้าอากาศเนี่ยเขาก็ใช้ชีวิตกันลำบากมาก ถ้าโลกมันร้อน
ก็ต้องช่วยกันลด
ปัจจัยสำคัญในการเลือกปลูกต้นไม้ต้องสำรวจพื้นที่ว่าต้นไม้ท้องถิ่นมีอะไรบ้างเขาจะเหมาะสมกับพื้นที่ตรงนั้นก็เปรียบเสมือนคนจะไม่มีการปรับตัวเลยแล้วเขาจะเป็นต้นไม้ที่เติบโตได้เร็ว
จริงๆแล้วต้นไม้ยังต้องการให้คนปลูกอยู่เพื่อลดโลกร้อนเป็นปอดให้พวกเราได้หายใจปลูกแค่คนละต้นเราจะได้มีป่าเพิ่มขึ้น
หลังจากปลูกแล้วเราจะดูแลให้เขารอดและเติบโตเป็นต้นไม้ที่จะสู้การเปลี่ยนแปลงของสภาพอากาศ
เลือกต้นที่ใช่จะปลูกที่ไหนก็ช่วยลดร้อนได้เริ่มปลูกวันนี้เพื่อโลกที่เย็นลงในวันพรุ่งนี้
SCG Passion for Better.
Vårt förslag till innovationstävlingen Infralighter Awards har vi döpt till Bifrost. Teamet bakom bron är konstruktörer, arkitekter och landskapsarkitekter förankrade i innovativa mindre kontor i samarbete med Kungliga Tekniska högskolan och Stockholms stad som behovsägare. Men bron är utvecklad för att passa i många olika kontexter, även i mindre kommuner. Generellt är efterfrågan från kommunerna stort på nya lösningar för broar för att kunna nå klimatmålen. Broar har även stor potential att bidra till gestaltande och rumskapande kvaliteter i det offentliga rummet. Bron är en gång- och cykelbro, volymmässigt konstruerad till över 90% i naturens lättaste konstruktionsmaterial, trä. Det ger en bro med 40 meter spännvidd en vikt på under 20 ton. Brons relativa lätthet gör även angörningen mer flexibel. Fundamenten skulle till exempel kunna utgöras av naturstensblock eller gabiljoner av återvunnen sprängsten. Även om trä är återbrukbart och koldioxidneutralt så är skogen en resurs vi bör hantera varsamt, varför mycket arbete har fokuserats på att minimera materialanvändandet och utveckla smarta lösningar för att optimera möjligheten till underhåll och ökad livslängd, samt möjligheten till återbruk. Det här har givit en modulär konstruktion med flertalet parallella bärande element där varje element vid behov enkelt kan bytas ut utan att bron behöver demonteras eller stängas av under en längre tid. För att ytterligare underlätta underhåll och minska kostnader och uppförandetid består bron av korta standarddimensioner. Det gör att de ingående delarna i bron lätt kan hanteras med mankraft och finns tillgängliga i det vanliga byggsortimentet. Det öppnar även möjligheten att jobba med återbruk av tidigare använda träelement från till exempel gjutformar. Stål används i strategiska lägen för att ta dragkrafter för ökad livslängd och flexibilitet samt snabbt montage. Vi har utvecklat en enkel knutpunkt som är applicerbar på samtliga möten mellan träelementen i bron. Knutpunkten har dessutom potential att tillverkas i stora upplagor och användas vid en mängd olika brokonstruktioner. Ytterligare en innovation är att använda TRP-plåt som bärverk för farbanan. TRP-plåten i kombination med tvärgående slitplank stabiliserar bron och skyddar underliggande tvärbalkar. Likt regnbågen i mytologin kan vår bifrost lätt anpassas till en mängd olika hinder och spännvidder beroende på det specifika behovet för platsen. Utöver träets goda inverkan på miljön har det dessutom en lugnande och stressreducerande effekt på vår hjärna, vilket i kombination med en harmonisk gestaltning gör att det interiöra rummet upplevs ombonat och tryggt. Belysningen är integrerad mellan de parallella bärverken för att slippa ytterligare belysningsstolpar. Tack vare användning av standarddimensioner, smarta och flexibla knutpunkter och den höga andelen trä så är bron 100% återbrukbar i sin helhet eller var del för sig i en ny kontext och kan därför med sitt smäckra uttryck potentiellt förgylla många platser i framtiden.
Aloha, good dag, or hello, good days for everyone. Welcome back to the afternoon session. Hope everyone enjoy the food. It's a Thai food for today. In the morning, we already learned the Swedish models in forestry management. Then we will continue with Swedish best practice for a sustainable forestry and possibility to apply these methodologies in Thailand. This afternoon sessions covers the topic, a manage for more, a forest-based industrial system leading toward future of bio-based cities. Let's begin with the first presentation. Speaker maybe not ready yet? Okay. For the first presentation is The Future of Bio-Based Cities by Ms. Ekblom and Ms. Ulrika Stenkula of Gaia Architect. Please a round of applause for the special speakers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us here. Very happy to be here, and we're going to be here for 1 week, exchanging experiences between Thailand and Sweden within architecture and forestry. So we're very happy about that.
Yeah, and we would like to share our thoughts on living forest, living society, and to emphasize the need that we need to work with the whole system chain, from thriving forest to thriving city. And we see that timber architecture can be a driving force for healing the system. And as we all heard this morning, the remarks from the morning, we live in challenging times, and we find it essential to expand our understanding of the whole system and how it integrates the consequences, and also, so importantly, the collaboration between disciplines. That's why we're so happy to be here among so many different stakeholders today and to explore how architecture can contribute. And this engagement has made us to start Gaia Architecture. And we believe that if we are to move urban development to real sustainability, we have to work with the entire system chains. That can be hard in the traditional role of the architect. You're often given a task to solve with the given conditions, instead of identifying a task and some needs and solving that with qualitative design and architecture. And for us, as at Gaia Architecture, to be able to explore these needs, we are firmly rooted in research and development to explore new ways of working. And we have several ongoing research projects. So what do we mean by whole systems in architecture? We find this is well illustrated in this image painted in the 14th century in Italy by Lorenzetti. It illustrates the city as a whole, as a part of a larger system. It was very clear then and can be not so clear today. The city in balance with its surroundings, like Mr. Bertie was talking about this morning, that Bangkok can provide its own material to restore the city and the landscape. And it's been a challenge because formal planning has had an urban focus. We haven't really looked at the landscape in planning. There's been a separation, city and landscape. Now landscape urbanism is emerging, how we can look at the city's needs and the landscape as a whole for foods, materials, and etc. And of course, there are different kinds of productive landscapes. And if you translate this to timber, this is agriculture. The monoculture of plantation you can need, but this is very much also what Bertie talked about. If we create good living environments for different species in the forest, we also want to create a productive landscape in our living environments as humans.
Okay, so taking us back to Sweden, the land in Sweden is covered of approximately 68% of timber. So we've been it's in our genes to work with timber. This is the Swedish castle in Stockholm, the royal castle that is 90% actually in timber. So it's in our genes and our traditional materials. So we're used to work with timber. But then for 100 years we weren't allowed to build higher buildings than 2 stories. So but now since 1994 that ban was lifted. So and that made timber a huge revival in Sweden. And Magnus is going to show some pictures about on high-rise building and show those how those engineered products are used in high-rise, the new timber engineered products. And you can also see the exhibition outside. And I will show you a project that is outside as well. But I'm going to, sorry, next picture. But I'm going to focus on 3 conditions that we have to take in consideration that is essential if we want to make sustainable architecture in timber. Next. And first of all, if architecture is going to be a different force in driving force in the forest, we have to not only looking at the CO2, we at the biodiversity as well. If we want to go for more resilient forestry, we have to, as architects, prescribe a diversity of timber, not only one type of timber, because that will affect the forest in the long run. And we see a lot of problems in Sweden now, as we spoke about this morning, with monocultures, and when heavy storms and pests comes, they are not as resilient as we would like. And there was the man asking a question earlier that we have to have economic, monetary, incentives to work with the timber in architecture, and I think that if you lose your forests because of a monoculture when it comes to storm, that's a very important factor. Next. Also, history shows that carefully detailed architecture and healthy materials and a lot of daylight is architecture that will be appreciated. And appreciated architecture is taken care of and will last for a long time. So that's also a fundamental aspect of sustainable architecture. And this aspect is very, I mean, it's very nice to work with timber in that sense, because timber is a tactile material. It has an embedded scale in the material, so you experience it differently on different distances and different angles, which is very nice. And it's a living material, which is also something that we experience in a positive way. And also we have to be material efficient when we make the architecture. Even though we work with timber, we have to be efficient. And this is an industrial building, or was designed as an industrial building, but it actually became an office building because of the interior environment. And this is made out of, the structure is made out of beams from sawdust. So we actually integrated the waste from the, or not a waste, but parts that we can't make timber from. in the structure by making a composite that could be a useful beam. So in that case, we can embed even the carbon from the sawdust in building instead of just making pulp. This is NCC's headquarters. NCC is a huge building company in Sweden. And in this atrium, we wanted people to experience this three-dimensional room. And we weren't really able to do this in concrete, and because of the weight. But since timber is quite a light material, we could do this structure in timber. And it also has a very nice effect on this interior. And research shows that being surrounded by trees has a very psychological and physical positive aspect on us. And the exposed timber in the interior environment tends to have the same effect on us. And I think this project confirms that, because in this huge building, this is where people go when they want a stress relief. And the timber is also here untreated, so that you get the fragrance of the timber when you come in here. It really has a big impact on the room. And this complex structure we could achieve entirely in timber thanks to combining different species of wood. Since beech is approximately twice as strong as fir, we integrated, or thanks to Magnus, who will talk a little later, who was a structural engineer, we managed to integrate birch in those bridges, and therefore we could span 15 meters only in timber. We also made use of prefabrication. The good thing about prefabrication, the stairs and the bridges are prefabricated outside Stockholm and then loaded down through the roof with a precision of 1 millimeter, which is also something very nice with timber, that it can be very precise. And you can also, as you can see, make very specific structures prefabricated, since it's so light, so you can transport quite big structures. So this is a project that we are working on now, where we are integrating a lot of locally grown different species of timber, and I think also that the material has to inform the design. In this case, not to make a high-rise building, instead making it lower and longer in order to be material efficient. Because maybe, I mean, we can in this case use a pillar and beam structure in glulam, of course, but then we have the bearing walls are stick frames. Thank you, stick frames like traditional, which is very efficient. And we also hope to use timber wood fibers in the insulation. And we're integrating clay on top of the slabs instead of traditional concrete to make the slabs heavier due to acoustic reasons. And we could, you can see that there is something about being close to timber, since it's very tactile material. So in that sense, it really takes care of the surroundings when you meet the facade, which is something very useful. Next, please. You can press again because it's moving. We could, since it's a light material and also quite easy to make specific things with, we could do this kind of ornamentation on the facades. That they are window shutters that also takes care of the heat load. And up in Dalarna, where this is made, they do a lot of woven, very nice patterns. So that's where the inspiration for this facade comes from. And since it's a living material, it needs organic. It needs to be maintained. And historically, we used to be very skilled in making structures where you could change the components when you needed to change a component. So this bridge took, and you could also. We also made a lot of structure that you could demolish and build up again on in another site. And this structure is inspired from that, where all the load-bearing elements are divided in and parallel, so you can change one element without closing off the bridge in this case. Okay, sorry, one more picture. Yeah, this is, referred to this since Shigeru Ban is a very famous Asian architect from Japan, and he designed this building for Duved up in North Sweden, and I'm the local head architect of this project, and he integrates the pulp in a very interesting way in the structure, since he's using those paper tubes. So that's another way to really take care of all the material and embed it in the structure.
And very quickly, here is an ongoing work. It's a research project we have together with Eco Innovation, and it's how to illustrate the possible regional development of timber architecture connected to a sustainable forest in Thailand. And this image is from Sweden. We tried it in Sweden, and you have to read this from left to right, like past, present into future. And this is an aid for us to kind of call in the future. So what do we see, like backcasting? So this is a quick start, and we're going to have a workshop on this on Monday for the Thai situation, history, context, and intended vision for future Thailand. And just to conclude and to sum up the opportunities, we see architecture as the potential driving force to create this, what we saw, the internal market in Thailand. So architecture and timber cities can be this driving force to create living environments for the future of Thailand and drive the forest in a sustainable forest industry.
Yes, and architecture that is appreciated and loved will be taken care of, and therefore the most sustainable solution for our development. And we also think that key in working with timber and all materials, but especially timber, is work interdisciplinary and work together and involve all consultancies and knowledge from the beginning, because then you will come much further.
And this is what we have been doing. We have another large research project to take care of 20 million tons of Swedish subway, or the Stockholm subway, where we gather people from the city, from the region, from universities, from all relevant stakeholders, and have these conversations to drive the work forward and create the same vision and the energy to push these large, kind of demanding, challenging projects. But together, we get the force to realize it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please give a big hand to Ekblom and Ulrika Stenkula. Thank you so much. You know, as architect is a very important fundamental for many industry. And next, we have presentation on wood building construction, challenges versus benefits by Mr. Magnus Emilsson, CEO of Limträteknik. Please welcome Mr. Magnus on the stage.
That's the wrong presentation. I'll start with thanking our hosts and partners for this opportunity, and thank you all for listening. I'm going to start with apologizing because this is going to be quite technical. It's going to be quite technical in parts. I'm going to start to talk about wood as a construction material and what makes it different from steel and concrete. And that's the material properties of wood itself. Wood is orthotropic, heterogeneous, has low density, and has a high variability. And yeah, these are words, but what do they mean? That is orthotropic means that in contrast to isotropic materials like steel and non-reinforced concrete, wood has different properties in different directions. So depending on how it's oriented, we get different strength and stiffness. And it has a high strength and stiffness along the grain and low strength and stiffness across the grain. So it's very important how we use it. And to illustrate this, we have a bunch of straws here, and that's really how wood works. And here we have an example of this difference. We can see that along the grain we have quite a high E modulus, and across the grain it's much lower. But we also see that per unit of mass it's as strong or stronger than steel and concrete, which is important for when we come to things like transportation to site. And it's also a heterogeneous material. That means that every part of a sawn timber part has different strength qualities. So if when we sort it, if we divided a board into several small pieces, we would get different results for every small piece. And then we have defects like knots, non-straight fibers, and also varying density. And the density of the wood is very strongly connected to the stiffness and strength of the wood. And this variability influences how we, in most countries' building codes or regions' building codes, we use the 5% style from the grading, which means that 95% of the graded wood is actually better than, and we see that the average value is much higher than the design value that we are allowed to use. And this opens up for the next part I'm going to talk about, namely engineered wood products, which is products that we have cut or grated or whatever done to the wood, and then we combine it into new products. And why do we do this? Well, we have limitations in the forest. These are the measurements for the Nordic forests, but we have the limitations in length, width, height, and we can also, and by cutting it up and gluing it together, we can work around these limitations and make larger pieces or thicker, and we can also use much more of the tree itself. And we can also reduce the impact of natural defects. We can remove those small parts that may be degrading a single plank and glue them back together and raise the quality of the wood. And we can also reduce the impact of the high variability. And this, of course, increases the value of the raw products in the end. So the variability influence, when we look at a single board, we saw that curve. But if we combine them, the spread gets much lower. So if we use the 5% fractile of the combined product, we get a much better design strength of the product while still using the same wood. So we have effectively increased the value of the timber. And lower variability leads to higher strength class. So simply put, engineered wood products are wood products that is split into smaller parts and then put together into equal sized or larger parts. And this allows us to make big element sizes. It reduces variability and it reduces orthotropy because we can vary the grain direction in the products. And here are some common products. Back in Sweden, the big product right now is CLT, cross-laminated timber. And all the sizes and things, that's not a limitation in the products, that are limitation in production right now. So in theory, you could make all of these products infinitely big. And the possibilities using these products are more modern buildings in wood. This is a 7-story building done in 2013. We show some pictures of this. We have currently under production a tall wood building in Stockholm. That's 14 floors. The bottom 2 floors are in concrete due in part for impact from traffic, and also the building stands above a tunnel. So we had to use the bottom floors as beams across the tunnel. But because it stands on a tunnel, there was a hard limit on how much the building could weigh. And by building it in wood, we could increase the height by 4 floors compared to a concrete structure. This is a large span sport arena. This is a combination structure, so they have tension rods in steel and wooden roof beams. A free span of 75 meters. There's an office building made in CLT. And here's a school building. And we're going to come back to that one, because why build this in wood? This could all have been done in concrete and steel. And the question and the answer is carbon dioxide. So the international standard for calculating this is in the life cycle assessment standard. And in that we have 5 stages: product stage, construction process, and use stage, and then end of life and benefits or reuse after that. The following calculations are going to show stages 1 to 3. So we haven't looked at end stage and benefits for reuse in this, and we're going to look at this school. So we did 2 designs for this school before the project started, one completely in wood and one with the staircases and elevator shafts in concrete. Just those parts, everything else was still wood. And looking at the LCA and life cycle assessment analysis, we saw that, and this also includes the usage over 50 years of the building, heating energy and air conditioning. And this is the difference. We saved over 250,000 kilos of CO2 by building it in wood. And that's the reason why to build in wood. But then we have some perceived challenges and solutions, and I'm going to talk about solutions or the road to the solutions for these challenges. We have moisture, we have fire, acoustics, and pests. Moisture is a mathematical problem for the most part, because indoors we have a controlled environment. So we can foresee and calculate how it goes. There are great software for doing this. It's not always easy and can be quite time intensive, but it's doable, and we can predict. The predictions that are produced by the softwares today and by the calculations are very good. They have great fit with reality. But load-bearing wood that is hard to replace should be placed in a protected environment. It should be under roof. Depending on local climate, it might need to be inside the shell completely. but it's not a problem if the building is designed correctly. Then we have fire. And wood in larger sections are actually extremely good at withstanding fire or keeping their load-bearing capacity during fire. That's because wood burns quite slowly when it's in large section because it chars, and the charcoal layer that the charring creates actually insulates the wood. And the charring rate is known for most types of wood and is easily testable. It's just to burn some wood and then you can calculate it. And by calculating the amount of charring that occurs after a given time frame, we can know how much load-bearing wood we still have left. There is also a calculation method based on temperature that's coming more and more in the standards. But the conclusion is pretty much the same from those calculations. And the remaining section after whatever time frame you have to fulfill in the fire codes is what we use to design the building for the load case that's appropriate for the fire. And then we have acoustics. Lightweight materials are in comparison with heavy materials worse at damping low frequencies. So in apartment buildings and offices, this can be a problem. And there are a lot of solutions for this. You build room-in-room type structures, or you add mass. This mass is today often concrete on top of a spring of some sort, insulation or something. But it can be just anything that has mass. And adding a bit of mass to lightweight constructions can also help with another problem of big buildings, and that's the dynamic behavior during wind load. So we get a structure that is harder to accelerate. And then we have pests. I have to admit that this is not because we don't have that problem in Sweden. But I've been researching it, and the USA and Australia has a lot of solutions and things in their codes because they have the same problem. And from what I've researched, distance from ground and soil is a strong influence factor for if it's going to be attacked or not. And also it's important how you design the connection to the foundation. It's possible to discourage entry into the wood. And quality control in this part is extremely important on site, that it gets sealed correctly. And then it's possible to treat the wood that's closest to the ground. If you get up to the 5th floor and there's no wood that they want to eat up to that point, it's doubtful they're going to travel all the way up to find it. So the amount of wood that needs to be treated with pesticides is, in a big building, probably quite small. And that's all, actually. Thank you. And before schedule.
Thank you so much, Mr. Magnus, for your sharing. It's not about a bio-based wood, but it's also many kind of related product industries. Well, last but not least, the presentation will be in topic, the industrial ecosystem of timber-based urban construction by Ms. Anna-Lena Gull from Luleå University of Technology. Please welcome Ms. Lena Gull on stage.
Thank you so much, and thank you for letting us come here and share our experiences. Just waiting for my presentation to appear, but I could start by
maybe introduce yourself.
Yes, please. I have a slide. I introduce myself, but I can say that I will present some experiences on the industry of mass timber construction in Europe and in Sweden in particular. from the origin and the market growth and to where we are now and the future trends that we see in building with massive timber, including new types of businesses and new value propositions for timber structures. So I grew up in a small agricultural town in Finland, so the choice was quite easy for me to start studying wood technology. Most of my friends and family own small forest areas. I also have a really small lot of my own. And since then I've worked in the industry with different kind of development projects, new factories, businesses, products. And the most interesting project that I took part in was I had the possibility to be responsible for building a new production facility for CLT, cross-laminated timber, that both P and Ulrika and Magnus has talked about, for the Swedish sawmilling company Setra for the past years. Setra is one of the biggest sawmilling companies in Sweden, and it has a similar ownership structure as Södra, with a lot of small forest owners owning part of the company. And the reason for them to invest in this kind of a production, because it is a big investment to start producing these materials. That is, the forest owners, they wanted to gain more value for their forest, to earn more money, to be simple. And also that there have been a really positive trend towards building in wood in Sweden for the past 10 years or so. And now I am continuing this work with a PhD thesis, where I'm looking at how to develop this industry further by collaborations in ecosystem structures. So I will make a short market overview of the CLT business. And from the beginning, it was developed in the 90s in Austria as a way of an inside-out way of working. It was the industry had the problem of the low-valued sideboards. That is the boards on the outer parts of the traditional sawing pattern, and also some otherwise damaged wood that they needed to get more money from. So the product was then developed as a cooperation between the university and the industry. And as Magnus described with the engineered wood products, you get better value from them by cutting them to pieces and gluing them together. So it's a cross section of the product on the left-hand side. Ulrika, I have a service here. So CLT is produced as unique elements for unique building projects, and the last stage of the production process after the lamination is the CNC cutting that you see in the left picture. The CNC cut the CLT elements into the exact right size. P told us about the millimeter precision that you can achieve with this. And the machine also cut holes for windows, doors, and the drillings and holes that are needed for installation. Or other special things that the customer might need. So this special treatment then results in a really efficient working environment on the construction field, as in the right-hand picture. The CLT elements can be lifted easily and fitted with lighter cranes and lighter hand machines on site than a corresponding concrete structure, for instance. So CLT was introduced in the 90s, but it was not until about 2015 that the growth really took off. And since then, a lot of investments have been done throughout Europe and also the rest of the world to increase production capacity. historically the production capacity has been equal to the market demand. There has been a really big demand for the product. And in Sweden, it was a small factory that had started in the early 2000 or 2003, but it was really, really small and working with quite simple principles. And at that time, some pioneers, Magnus, for example, being one of them, started working with the material. It gradually got established on the Swedish market, and around maybe 3 years ago, I would say, then the product was fully established as a viable alternative to concrete in tall buildings. And by the year 2021, 3 new big production plants had been opened. The carbon dioxide has been the driver for the increase, but also on the Swedish market, one of the success factor for the market growth has been when the local companies or the national companies started their own production, then the construction industry got local supply of the products. And from, I would say, last year, maybe a year 2021, 2022, we have a new type of businesses that have started. I will talk. Those are the ones that I will talk about in further on. There are framing contractors that are specialized on timber framing and delivering only that as a subcontractor to the main contractor in a building project. And those can be completely new businesses or existing construction companies that need or want to specialize in wood, often then due to sustainability reasons, but also efficiency. So now, this year, 2023, the total Swedish production volume or capacity is over 300,000 cubic meters. So in just a few years, it has increased a lot. Still, the full capacity is not on the market yet because the factories are in the early stages, all of them. And during the early years in Europe and in Sweden, the big sustainability leap was taken by simply starting to build in wood. You replaced other not so carbon dioxide friendly materials with wood. And now we see a shift, a trend in Sweden where we start optimizing the framing systems in different ways, but resource optimizing is one major part of it. So from just building with wood equals being sustainable. Now we start using less wood, as little wood as needed to be sustainable. We also saw some examples of that from the Gaia projects where they use different types of components. And also the framing systems are optimized in regards to production time, and then with production time I mean production time on site, on the building site. So a lot of prefabrication and smart assembly solutions are developed to make it fast, the assembly fast, and also to use as little labor as possible. So it's also not only the effective assembly, but also to try to prepare the next phases of the building project when the main contractor continues his or hers further works with joineries and installations that can be prepared for in the prefabricated wood components. So and all of this then of course has an economical impact. Which is good, because it's good that we have reached a stage where sustainability also equals money in a positive way. So from the start where the industry had a problem and developed a new product to solve that, now more of the user side has started developing alternatives to this and solutions for this. So it's more of a outside-in perspective now in the development. And a couple of examples of these types of innovations that have been developed. On the left-hand side, it's a prefabricated flooring slab component consisting of glulam and CLT. This reduces the amount of wood used for the product, but it also increases the possible span for the slab. And on the right is just one of many examples of new types of connectors for these types of materials, because wood need other types of connectors than other materials to be efficient. So I would like to explain a little bit about my research and what I'm looking at. And this is the case of the framing contractor in the middle that gathers some suppliers, fasteners, structural designer, material supply of GLT, CLT, and prefabricated wood components, which can also buy supply from the glulam factory, for example. And then they create a wooden frame, which is then delivered to the main contractor. And the main contractor has some suppliers. He add products and services that complement the wooden framing. And in the best of cases, these people or companies have really good collaboration with the framing contractor. So they design good things for the wooden structure as well. And the previous slide showed the contractual ties between the actors, and now I have added the layer of the interaction between the actors. And as you can see, the dependency of the information flow in this system or the ecosystem is high. And the information flow can be anything from the HVAC designer providing the CLT manufacturer with the correct data sets to be able to make the right drillings in the CLT, to the Industrial Wood Association for Wood Industry developing technical guidelines for supporting the real estate developers to making the right decisions or in the early phases of the project to prepare for a good wood product to be done. These interactions across borders and the multidisciplinarity that we heard about earlier also is really important for those innovations and the optimizing of the building systems to occur. So what I try to do now in my research is to find out what key success factors are there for developing the mass timber construction by using the ecosystem collaborations. And some of the factors that we have identified are the following. There are a lot of more, but these are maybe the main ones. The first one, the tight cooperation, that is, as the previous slide showed, the interaction is important for learning and developing of the system and the business. The joint value proposition is that means that it is developed by not only by the framing contractor, but the other partners also contribute to that, and that they co-specialize. Each of one of them have their own specialization and contributes to this value proposition. And the closeness to the customer is visible in this ecosystem perspective since the framing contractor is usually an experienced subcontractor and is used to working with the main contractor, and then you can have a easy access to customer demands and developments, and you share risk and you share investments in the ecosystem, but then you also need to have incentives for all, because if you're optimizing a framing system, then it might lead to a smaller delivery for one party. Then you need to have a good incentive anyway, and of course the right people for good leadership and the good technical competence. Yes. So to sum up. The development in Europe has been gradual, also and in Sweden, of course, and there have been national adaptations of the building systems due to building regulations and the customer demands, but also to the industry structure and the raw material base of the different industries. We have a little bit different products in different countries. So I have here now presented the case of Sweden, and I hope that it can be an inspiration for us. But those are the processes and products and systems that we use and fit best for us. So if a corresponding industry would be developed in Thailand, then of course you need to have the Thai perspective on that for the Thai market and the Thai forests to be taken into consideration. But still, I think that one good example that one might bring from Sweden is maybe to start with a quite simple, robust building system to get started, and then from that allow the industry collaborations to continue the development together then with the forest supply to find out the best use of the local raw material in Thailand. So, but I think I speak for all of us when I say that in any way that you might want to continue the journey with wood construction in Thailand, we are of course happy to share more of our experiences in any case that is possible and wanted. So with this I say thank you for all.
Thank you so much. Not only the challenges, but we also know the benefits for this industry also. And we will have the next is a panel discussion. It's about on a manage for more, a forest-based industrial system leading toward future of bio-based cities. Please welcome special three speakers. First, Ms. Ekblom and Ms. Ulrika Stenkula, partner of Gaia Architects. Secondly, Mr. Magnus Emilsson, CEO of Limträteknik, and also Ms. Anna-Lena Gull from Luleå University of Technology. And I would like to pass the stage to Assistant Professor Asan Suwannarit from Thammasat University of Thailand, who will be a moderator in upcoming discussion session. Please.
Okay ครับสวัสดีครับทุกท่านที่อยู่ในห้องประชุม
Good afternoon everyone here on site and online.
Speakers. Well, first of all, thanks for the very interesting and very impressive presentation. I just told you that some of you have already answered all of my questions that I listed. So you mean I think you have done a very good job in presentation. From all of your presentations, it just reminded me a little bit of my European memories. I used to work in Germany as a landscape architect, and at that time the office is trying to build a new office And my boss at that time, Professor Peter Lutz, he used the timber as a main materials for the new building. So I kind of familiar with the, like those the CLT materials in terms of how they construction. So it's really interesting to see how it has been done in Sweden as well. Timber is not really, I guess everyone here can agree that timber is not really a new materials. And if we look at the Thai traditional architecture, we have been using timber like all the time, right? From the like structural level, we're building pillars and then beams and with timbers, and then we build up. But then that tradition has shifted. I think like through the modernization, we have seen more like new modern materials like metals, glass, and so on. So is it the same situation in Sweden? That this is a shift? Maybe some of you can try to answer my question.
It's certainly a shift for larger scale construction. We have in Sweden 50% of all built buildings have always been done in wood, but most of them have traditionally been single family homes. And now or large span construction. We've been building different sports arenas or agricultural buildings in wood for a long time, but now it's moving into the commercial and multi-story building sector.
So it's becoming a new, like a trend,
that
people starting to come back and build the timber buildings. So I have seen in your presentation, Anna-Lena, I think you mentioned about the market and the ecosystem, right? So can we say, like, do you have any numbers or like estimation that what would be the percentage of the new building built in the timber with the timber materials?
I have only because we would have needed some research to get the figures, but I know in Sweden we have reached 25% of the multi-story family houses are built in timber. Yes, in various ways, not only CLT, it's also these lightweight structures.
I see. And is it more like a general public's opinion that they would like to build the building in timber, or is it more a job of the designer to convince that? Now I throw the question to the designer.
I think the general public is very aware of what Aaron started with today, the great challenges we have with the climate issue. And you don't want to have your home and raise your family in a building that is negative for the climate. So there is, you see a great demand from many in Sweden, many around the world, I think, but also families, that they want to have certified houses that can show that it's not poisonous materials, they are carbon neutral, and so on, for example.
So it's not too hard to convince them now to use timber.
Yeah, but a few years ago it was really hard work to get a real estate developer to invest in doing a timber structure, because something you haven't done before, of course, it will be more expensive the first time. So, but then I think it shifted to that no one wanted to be the last one and not have the knowledge and not have the capacity to make timber buildings. So I think it shifted now. Most big real estate developers in Sweden and building companies are now familiar with CLT and timber and bigger structures, but some of them still have a lot, or we all have a lot to learn.
Yeah, is that done by any kind of incentive from the government to push the timber materials?
So we have this political Ulrika, you know the English translation for gestaltad livsmiljö.
In 2018 we got a national policy in place which is called gestaltad livsmiljö, which is designed living environments, and all national agencies are supposed to contribute for this to be fulfilled. So that has helped architecture a lot, because then we can lean on that, and there is financing, and many agencies and organizations have to work together, so we get the collaborative ecosystem, and we get the labs and how to build the networks and the collaborations.
And that document or pushes specifically.
So since last all buildings climate declared, so you have to declare the amount of CO2 that was used up during production.
And we also have this state-funded institute, Vinnova, which has launched several programs on this. We are applying for one right now. That's why we work a lot with research and development, like practice, research and development close to practice, which is building networks, creating labs, creating a pilot to kind of manifest it and then scale it.
And Nurse, have something to add? You just
no, I just wanted to add that but I think already in 2015 many municipalities in Sweden developed their own wood building strategies. So they were active. They were active before the government was active.
I guess nothing happened accidentally. It's a collective activities by government, by local authority, and by the customer, by the user itself.
And I would, sorry Magnus, I would just want to add to that. I think that the municipalities saw the economical potential because since the country is heavily dependent on the wood industry and the forest, then there are a lot of the companies in those municipalities. So the reason to apply this strategy is also to enhance the tax income to the to the city.
Yeah, and recently with rising interest rates, the housing market has gone down a bit in Sweden recently, but the newly finished massive timber houses has not seen a lowering of sales. So right now that also indicates that the consumer are interested in the type of building.
So if I can summarize a little bit, so now the majority of the timber building in Sweden is still like a single houses, or is it more into the like
the majority in number of houses is still single family houses, but that's because we are still quite a rural country. So I think it's about half of our housing is single-family homes, so it's going to take a long time before we catch up.
And more than 90% of those single-family houses are built in wood. More than 90% of the single-family houses are built in wood.
Oh, okay. Would there be like growing trends in terms of the like different type of buildings, like in terms of like we have seen some case study like offices, school, like public infrastructures. Those are on the trends now?
Yes, schools and government-funded buildings overall is mainly built in wood right now, I think. And we also see offices more and more.
And just to refer to the scale of the buildings, I mean, we know that we have these single-family houses, and that has worked well because of the situation in Sweden. But if we also see a lot of high-rises in Sweden, but we as architects see that 3, 4, 5 stories are quite good to create a living environment and still have a relationship with the surrounding landscape, and also be able to create a productive landscape, because then you can integrate like small agriculture, or our dream is to integrate this in a forestry landscape. That's not the case in Sweden today, and of course it comes a lot of service and infrastructure with that, but that's something that we think of and want to visualize, and how to live coexist with the productive landscape in all the products that we need, including the forest.
As a landscape architect myself, I really like the way you address that issues. I think I even note it down when you say like the relationship between the city and the landscape is really important. How people get the interaction, and how we build up, the relationship to the land. Yeah, that's really important. So you've been in Thailand for a couple of days, I guess. What is the one day? Okay. What is your perception of a Bangkok city?
We loved the park yesterday.
You've been to the park at Chulalongkorn University.
The Centenary Park. And as an urbanist, we were driving through And I know this is not about mobility, but if a lot of energy was put into mobility, we could free up a lot of space. Cars take a lot of space. If we replace that with greenery in this fantastic climate, I would love Bangkok even more.
Okay. Well, I guess I have to admit that I really like this set of presentation today. It's really diverse. We have architects, we have engineers, and we have like industrial ecosystem. I think that's really a mixture. And several of you, I think, has touched upon the point that I noted I wanted to discuss also. I think another point that I really interested is about the product life cycle. I think some of you have mentioned about the LCA. I think when we talk about timber materials, a lot of concerns are about how long are we going to use it, and how is it made. In Bangkok, we don't really have a forest, or we don't even have a land to grow trees anymore. So some of you have already touched it. So, but I think this is very important aspect. Like for example, I think you mentioned about the material production process. I think, yeah.
Yeah, the material production process.
Like timber forestry. Like,
yeah.
I know that the session in the morning already highlighted about what would be the sustainable forestry management, right? But I would like to hear a little bit more maybe from the engineer aspect and the designer aspect. How is it important to keep this in mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we have one important aspect is to make use of as much timber as possible integrated in the structure, so that because we know that now a very little percentage, like 10% of the forest that is cut down, is actually being integrated in products or structures that would last for a long time. So I think there is a lot of development that we can do there, and we showed an example of a building made out of composite of sawdust, for example. That's one way. And also the paper tubes that Shigerban uses a lot. But there are also two aspects of this, I think, because if you talk to a carpenter or someone that works with demolishing building and trying to recycle or upcycle materials, they know exactly what to do with a piece of wood if it's solid, even though it was built in a building for 200 years ago. They would know what to do with that piece. When in 200 years from now, if we include a lot of glue and components that, what people won't know 200 years from now what to do with that piece in a sustainable way and how it could be used and so on. So there are two sides of this, but yeah, just reflection on what you said.
And also, recycling concrete is much harder than wood, of course, even harder.
Anna-Lena, you have something else to add?
And we are also seeing new products come out quite quickly today, where, for instance, for acoustics, we use a lot of plastic-based or rubber-based resilient damping strips today to solve flanking transmissions and things like that. And they're starting to come new the products made from pulp or wood fibers to replace those. So I think we're going to see an increased amount of those products, because with an increased demand of construction timber, we're going to get more byproducts that we need to use somehow, and I think that is going to be the driving innovation part for the building industry in the coming years.
I also think that, as I mentioned, historically we were very good at making structures that are, the design is very visual, the function and the assembly is very visual. So when we are demolishing a house now from 200 years ago, like a log house that we used to build in Sweden a lot, it's very easy to disassemble and put up in another place, because it's very informative. It's very obvious how it's put together and how to disassemble it and then reassemble it. And I think that's something that can inspire us as designers now, that make a visual and easy understandable design, so that someone can actually understand the building in 200 years.
I think that the original question was about the production process or something. So what I started thinking about is how we use the wood from the origin, how we choose what parts of the log that goes to what type of production. Today the sawmilling industry is rather a bulk industry. You take in the logs in the saw, and then out comes a certain amount of different types of boards, and then you dry it and then you sell it. And there's not so much differentiation on what goes where. So I'm quite sure that we sell a lot of too good material to some customers.
I guess my original question was about the production of the timber materials that can supply into the construction process. But I think from your answer, I think what we're hearing now, it's not just about the new timber, but you're also thinking about how to use reuse the old timber, which is very important. And that's very important.
Also, when possible, use like whole timber without that are not engineered or processed.
Yes. So in this way, I can say that the design is not just about the product, but it's also about the process, how to making it right.
And knowledge about this Magnus showed us some of the properties of timber, and it's quite complex. So it takes quite a lot of knowledge to actually use the material in a sufficient way.
But during lunch, I spoke with and there is a great knowledge in Thailand too, I heard, and since it is so specific timber, there is very old knowledge that the longer a joint is lives, the stronger it becomes, because if you know the properties of wood and how to join it together, the stronger it gets. And this knowledge is there, but the people are old who hold the knowledge.
And we're losing the knowledge.
Yeah, you have to mine it. Ask the people.
Yeah, and on that point, just to take it further, the knowledge part, it has taken some time to get wood construction going in large scale in Sweden, just because at the end of the 50s, start of the 60s in Sweden, the government introduced some new housing bills. And the goal was to build 1 million residents in a 10-year span or something like that. And to achieve this, prefab concrete was the solution at that time. And that became so dominant, so we lost a lot of carpentry skill in the workforce, which became a problem when we started to introducing it now again. So it's taken quite some time to build up the knowledge in all now I lost the word, but in all stages of a construction, the people on the site, the engineers, the architects, because wood construction requires slightly different architecture than concrete housing, because we have different limitations on spans and need for height and things like that.
To me, it seems like the timber construction is really a handcraft. You really need a person with the skillful to do it, right? That could be one of the limitations to scale it up, I think.
And that's also what makes it so fantastic, that it's so complex.
Very unique.
That's what we experience as humans. We are building our own environments for ourselves, and it's a fantastic material. Thanks to
I have just heard that you are also a carpenter.
Yes,
yourself.
I am. I am.
Pai is a very skilled carpenter, and that helps, I think. And I think also just a reflection on now we're making this image from past via present to future. And in the past we were building our own houses ourselves. Maybe we took down the trees, We built the houses,
Yes.
we lived in them, we recycled them. And now we have become very global, very international. And the architecture and our living environments are quite same all over the globe. I have to say, sky rises, white, black, glass, concrete.
Yeah.
And then I see a trend that we kind of come back to our roots and what's our identity and what's our local identity and what materials are here and how can we express that identity in our living. And then we need the skills we had, but we had to do our future.
So in terms of the industrial ecosystem, do they need to have like a kind of standardization and customization? I think like when we talk about we build our own house, we tend to do like personal individuals, right? But if we're living in the globalization, I mean, everything has to be at a certain like form and standards.
There is, of course, the building industry is one of the most heavily regulated because there's a high risk of risk of personal injury if something is done wrong. This, of course, leads to a certain amount of standardization and because of the regulation. But that doesn't have to be a hindrance if the standardization and regulations are done correctly. Or
so you're saying the standardization should not be the limitation of the desirability.
Yeah.
Okay.
That could be a frame. I mean, now when we're working with the office building in Sweden, it's quite standardized to a large extent and very clever. But then you add a layer of something that is not so heavily standardized, but can be more individual and local. So just to know the span when you use the industrial system and how to interpret it to be local. And also a sense of craft, because we appreciate that.
Yes.
And I think rather than the standardization should be the limitation, I think the local resources should be. Because you said we live in a global world. For how long?
It's a good question.
I think we are to be more and more dependent on the local supply chain, and I think that is what will have a big impact on the climate.
Yeah, this standardization done correctly shouldn't lead to more administrative burden, because that's usually the hindrance. There's nothing stopping very local and small-scale production of components for buildings.
I hope your message will be sent louder through Thai government. Thanks for that.
I know. I spend half my days filling out reports and certificates of calculation and things like that.
Yeah. You touches a little bit on the maintenance issues. You have read my mind, I think, because when we talk about the timber materials, the maintenance is really an issue. And maybe some of your buildings have just been recently built, right? So maybe can you elaborate a little bit more? You already point out that there are 4 challenges.
Yeah. The main load-bearing parts should be protected from the outside environment because they are not interchangeable, or at least not easily interchangeable. If you have a wooden facade, you probably should calculate for the maintenance of that. But just because if it's a wood structure, it doesn't need to be clad in wood. The cladding can be adapted to whatever suits the environment.
Especially in Thailand, we are the tropical climate.
Yeah.
It's very humid. Yeah.
But I also think I showed a bridge in the ending there that is like influenced by the maintenance issues, where instead of making one bearing structure, the load bearing structure is divided, and therefore you could easily replace one piece at a time without closing off the bridge in that case, for example. So I think that's an inspiration in designing if you want exposed structures or even if you don't. I mean, maintenance will be done sooner or later, I think, in many parts of the building, and I think that's an inspiration to design that way that is possible also.
And that is a state-funded research project, so it's done in a small scale, but then can be scaled, of course, both in larger bridges, in buildings, but there is a great knowledge built within the project.
Interesting, yeah. I think we have heard also the words like upcycling, like end of life of materials. Do you see like what would be the next challenge for the designer to think about it? I think now most of the designers think about the building now, right? And what like with the timber detailing, timber construction methods, what could be the next challenge for us?
I think that we took on like a really big challenge in saying that when we design, really want to work with the entire the entire system chain, and not only like looking at the building and make a monument, but looking at the circumstances in the forest, locally available materials, make a design that will last for a long time. Because maintenance is needed, but also talking too much about how to disassemble a building and what will happen when this building won't be functional anymore. I think better design buildings that will be as appreciated so that they will last for a long time. And also like very specific architecture tend to be the architecture that will be appreciated in next generation as well, even though it's not has the same function anymore. Even though it's a very specific environments, people tend to like it and make it work in another context. So I think we should not be too scared of that either.
But it's not so easy.
As long as we integrate good architectural qualities like daylight and good acoustics and everything that you experience in the room.
And we also need economists because our economy doesn't support long-lasting things, and not even architecture, which is a huge investment. We cannot pull down buildings that are 10, 20 years old, and that's ridiculous. It's a waste of resources. So we need an economic model that supports quality. And I mean, we found, we just have to make that work. We made economy up as an exchange, a mode of exchange, and we have to make it up so it supports qualitative living environments.
Yeah, and I showed an office building, and we have during the initial work we have looked a lot at it, at designing it in such a way that it can be rebuilt. It can change its use. It might always be an office building or something, but we try, and we've been doing that the last couple of years in the project, is looking at how can this be altered to be something else later down the line, so that the structure and the foundation and everything, we can get a lifespan of several hundred years on one building, hopefully.
And also build a few more floors on the same structure, if needed.
And this can, of course, this can drive cost, but sometimes you can find ways to do it without increasing the cost of the structure.
And not be stupidly cost efficient, because
that's very important, the financial aspect.
Yeah, because for example in architecture, floor height is very important to make it general. If you have a generous floor height, floor to ceiling height, then it's very useful for many. I mean, people love to live in high ceiling apartments. all, it can accommodate a lot, but sometimes you save money to reduce the floor height, and then you have kind of marked out or lost a lot of opportunities in the future. And that's also with forest. I mean, we have to think long term, next generations. We hope people can live here in generations after us.
And just as Magnus said in the beginning, that those apartments and buildings for living, they don't drop as much in price when economic goes down, because we want to pay for those qualities. And also we've seen in this the NCC office building that I showed that there was a bidding on this huge project. It's 50,000 square meters altogether. It was a bidding, and it's also a bit outside Stockholm, and that is not very common. And what the bidders said was that thanks to those timber atriums, I mean, it's worth more, and that was something that we really fought for to make those atriums, because it was hard to argue for financially in the beginning, but then everyone could see the qualities, and then now everyone is very proud, very happy.
Okay, become like everyone's new place and so on. I think as a designer, we all know that our job is just a part of it, right? But the other part rely on the contractors, suppliers. I want to touch on this subject a little bit, like the industrial ecosystem plays a very important role on how we successfully transform our conventional building to a timber building. In Sweden, I guess the construction ecosystem are different from Thailand. Can somebody share about it? Like,
I'm not sure that it's different. I don't know, but the ecosystem for large-scale timber structures and a lot of them is just starting to come in place, because it has required some gambling on parts of companies that decided this will be a viable business and start.
Strategical decisions. That's a better wording than gambling.
It has taken a few years, but now the industry starts to come in place. We have, for a long time, we have had the production of the raw materials and the components that has existed, but what was lacking in Sweden was the framing contractor, someone that could deliver it as a package to the general contractor. And that is just starting to fall into place.
Let me be more direct. Maybe, like, for example, is the size of the contractor now, is it small, local, or is it large conglomeration size?
You mean the framing contractor or the main contractor?
The main contractor and the framing contractor. What is the nature of it?
It can be any way. It can be. You can have a framing contractor that has a turnaround, part of a larger construction company that has a turnaround of several millions of Swedish crowns, and a main contractor that has a turnaround of 100 millions, because it's a project-based business, and sometimes in some market, a smaller main contractor has the project, and then they buy the framing from another one. So that's
it can be any scale.
Yes, it can really be that.
I guess in Thailand that will be the next challenge, to get the supplier or contractor that can work with this new concept. I think that could be a new business also. We have heard a little bit about, and I think this will be my last theme to discuss. I think we have learned about the technology. I think one of the important aspects of having technology helping us in terms of doing this, like, for example, I try to come up. So there are new emerging advanced design and construction technologies, like, for example, BIM or digital publication. I think I have seen in many slides of you today, robotic construction. Does it really help, or is it useless in terms of the timber construction? which particular technology that will help to to work with this timber materials?
I mean, prescribing wise or drawing wise, while drawing, we work very closely with the skilled 3D people that actually just specialists in modeling in the computer. Because I think it's really hard to be expert on everything.
Sure.
So I think that's very efficient for us, at least on that side. But then on the industry side, I think Anna-Lena and Magnus may be more suitable to answer.
I could just make an example, just a simple thing of making a hole in a prefabricated CLT wall. If you make that hole on site, because you can get it CNC machined from the factory, then you have some minutes of the structural engineer to make a hole in the drawing, and then it costs just a little bit to make the actual hole in the CNC. But if you make it on site, then you have to pay for the person that makes the hole. You have to rent a large drilling machine. You have to have some person that comes out and measure exactly where the hole shall be on the and then eventually you have the risk that the hole is in the wrong size or in the wrong place, and then you have to make it again and to correct the mistake.
To fix the mistake.
So I mean that small example is just you can save so much money in this. With this technique.
Yeah, the construction industry in Sweden, the prefabrication is highly mechanized, but the work on site is less so in general.
But in order to get this precision, you need to be prepared to pay a little more in the beginning, because in order to make all the drawings that is needed to ask a machine to drill those holes or whatever and be sure that they land in the right place, it's a lot more work for architects and construction engineer and ventilation consultancies and so on. But I mean that you will gain those money by far later on, but you have to. I mean, someone has to do the work.
I need to draw a drawing in the millimeters.
So in millimeters.
To get the exact size of the hole, in order to get the fabrication before.
The precision of those stairs that I showed is 1 millimeter on site. So.
Wow.
So today we draw and design and make a 3D model down to the screws that are in the that should be put in on site or are put in at the factory, with everything in 3D and in our BIM model, so that it's easy for the contractor to order things, and it saves a lot of time on site because everything comes cut to dimension and
and also these 3D models with the sunlight and the material, and you can feel you are there. It's really creates this vision that gives energy to the whole project group. I think this is what we're going to build, and you can really feel. And with VR, you can almost feel that you're there, and then you want to get in there. So it's a very strong potential in creating that vision. The money is in the vision. When you can kind of have so many people buy into the vision, you can get energy and to drive it into manifestation.
Well, I guess it's a very complex issues when we really talk about it. I think I see more components in it, like in different scale, in different components, like ecosystem. There should be more people engaged into these things. So I think the time is up. So I think we open the floor for the question, right? Where is my MC?
Yes, we have time
we have
for
10 minutes.
Yes, it's around 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
If anybody have some question, please raise your hand.
We have a few questions. Go from the back.
Yes, thank you. This time, Magnus, a very technical question. Have you tried to produce LVL and CLT from birch only?
Yes. I haven't, but there's a company in Haslacher in Germany that produces birch-based CLT.
And can they use less wood because of the different strength, density, and other properties of the birch compared to the spruce?
Yeah, yes, in theory, but there might be other limiting factors such as fire, which can reduce the gain. But the stronger the wood that goes into the CLT, the stronger the panel is. So in theory, using better wood, using denser or wood with a higher strength class will reduce the volume of the panel on site. So it shouldn't be a problem using, because the most trees that go here have a higher strength class than spruce, which we use for most of it. So that should be an advantage for the product, really.
Yeah, because to be realistic, the only local resources are important. The only local resources that could make a difference in Thailand or Laos is the eucalyptus wood, and it has properties, strength properties, and densities that are even higher than the beech. My question is only if the construction standards, international standards, I assume they are on dimensions as well as strength.
No, they are just. There is no international standard for CLT yet. There is a European one coming, but that standard only regulates some aspects of the like the width of the board has to be a certain factor of the height and things like that. So it's free to put in whatever material you want, but you have to classify it. That's the only. But classifying the sawn product is what's needed to produce it. Then you need to have, of course, quality control of the gluing process and everything like that in the production. But there's no hindrance in the standards for different types of raw material used.
Okay, that gives hope. There is actually an LVL factory just set up and started in Laos. So we will follow up that with great interest. Thank you very much.
If you're especially interested in birch, there are programs on the Royal Institute, the KTH in Sweden, that they research on this in junctions instead of steel.
Great, thank you.
Just more question, please. We have one at the back and maybe one at the front. Two at the back. So let's.
Hi, Sunit from ChangeFusion. I have a quick question on you mentioned growing a local ecosystem, especially local markets, is a way to go. So I wonder, or would love to hear a bit more on the role of city government or local, how to create local demands for this kind of. I think you have many cases of different local government come up with regulations or plans or strategies, so something that local governments perhaps can learn from. Thank you.
Anyone?
Yes, thank you. We have talked a little bit of bits of this. I mean, the impact of the different cities' wood strategies and the support from the government. I would say. I kind of lost what I would say. Magnus, help me.
Some municipalities in Sweden have decided that when they asked for an offer for a building, from the start it was just you need to leave an alternative in wood as well, not just a concrete and steel structure. It started with that they wanted an alternative, and if it was competitive, they usually chose the wood alternative. Now it's moved to that they only asking for wood construction when they build city buildings and things like that.
No, I remember what I was about to say. In Sweden, Magnus told us earlier that we have that we need to have a carbon dioxide declaration of each new building, and that is really a part that drives a local supply, even not a national supply, but a local supply, because then you have to also calculate the impact of the transportation to the construction site. And since the wood materials don't use so much carbon dioxide, then the transportation will be the biggest part in that.
And all of this is driving the whole system chain. All these kind of demands and needs is driving the system chain, and working in networks like Pi was also starting a network among architects to exchange knowledge about timber architecture, and there are all these national networks, what we're doing today. So kind of the ecosystems, the networks, the policies, the system chains, and organize ourselves and to see where's the weak link, because that's defining the whole system.
Yeah, and it should be said that with the regulation that you need to declare the CO2 emissions from building production, there's no requirement, but just having forcing them to declare how much CO2 they produce makes people choose to build in wood to be able to show that their building is not damaging the environment as much.
Just to let you know, I'm coming from Thammasat University, so I should reserve my opinion on how the decentralized government issues and the decentralized governmental issues. So I'm not going to answer that. So, but please go to maybe the next question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lars, I'm from Sasin. I had a question here. You started early on saying one of the main reasons that is driving this is the issue related to carbon and carbon emissions. And besides looking at carbon offsets and carbon taxations, that you look at costs doing constructions in comparison to traditional method, if you concrete and steel. Is it much more, or even an estimate, much more expensive this to use wood, and how does it look like when you're scaling up and are getting larger scale productions? Which direction is it going?
In the beginning, it was a little bit more expensive to build in wood. By now, we are closing the gap, but it depends on the type of building and the type of situation. It's not a one-to-one replacement.
But still, we have one construction company in Sweden that we all work together with quite often, that have been a pioneer in wood construction. They have now learned these methods very well. So when they calculate on projects, quite often they're offering on a wood-based solution for a project is lower than the concrete, because they know how to use the materials and how to manage the process.
Yeah, and the main influencing factor that made it more expensive, and I'm sure everyone that's in the contractor business will know this. If you don't know what you're about to do, then you add some risk money on top of your offer, and that went through the whole system. So the electrician added a little bit because he had never mounted electrical outlets in these walls, and that went through the whole chain. By now, there's several people that have worked in it, so now they don't add that cost for the risk anymore, and that has driven the costs down. Financially, it's never going to be cheaper really than building in concrete, because then people will just raise their prices to earn more money. So the competition isn't wood to wood, it's the whole building ecosystem that sets the price.
Yes, the question in the back, in the front.
Yes, my name is Suwan Tangmicharan from Royal Forest Department. Thank you very much. You show us the very nice wood building. But one thing that I'm thinking is, or my question is something like more technical things. What do you think about what is the species in terms of the variety of the species? What is the challenging or limitation of the selection of the species? You show us something like softwood in our local species, right? What about the hardwood or or some species from tropical, something like that?
For the Swedish market, it's mostly softwoods, but there's nothing stopping it from being hardwoods. There are, of course, species that might be better suited than others for different things, but I think all types of wood pretty much are usable for construction in parts. And we are seeing a greater diversity in the Swedish market, which has been very monocultural from wood species. It's just been spruce or fir, but we're seeing it expand to several species of wood. But it's a slow process.
So maybe we still have time for the last question. The microphone.
Only one thing related to some question ago. Don't you build much faster also when you build in I don't know. And even though we have our own factory, I'm not really into it. But then you could rent it out quicker also if you make like a commercial building. Make also that you get some income from that.
Yes, that is true, and that is part of the assembly is really quick, but the largest impact is because the wood is dry, so you can start the completing works immediately after the assembly. You don't need to wait for the concrete to dry.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Good one.
Yeah, I just want to take the chance to ask from the Royal Forest Department about the now of I think 3 or 4 different examples from around the world of making CLT from eucalyptus. So we can exchange that information later, and also from your question. And they're building buildings in it. That I also want to say that I mean, you see almost like the baby steps now being taken from the softwood, from the spruce and the pine and beech in Germany and so forth. I see this as kind of an Apollo project for the world to test many, many more species to see, you know, how they can work in these building systems so that we can promote a more diverse species in the forest.
Thank you very much for
Thank you very much for the special speakers and moderator and the questionnaires also. All right, so right now we're gonna break around 15 minutes. Our last session will be start after coffee breaks. It's 3:45 p.m. But don't forget to make a translator device because the next session will be Thai languages. And you still have time to check it out outside of the exhibition. We are prepare many kind of exhibition for you. So let's coffee breaks. สวัสดีช่วงสุดท้ายนะคะ Excuse me, if you don't have a translator device, I would like to let you know that you should get a translator device for translate in Thai language. ค่ะยินดีต้อนรับในช่วงสุดท้ายนะคะซึ่งเป็นการเสวนาถึงโอกาสความท้าทายในการนำโมเดลการจัดการป่าแบบสวีเดนมาปรับใช้ในประเทศไทยค่ะผ่านมุมมองของผู้เชี่ยวชาญหลากหลายภาคส่วนในหัวข้อ The Way Forward for Thai
Well, in the final wrap-up session, we'll focus on the way forward for Thai sustainable forest management. And I would like to invite our three panelists on the stage, Dr. Suwan Tangmitjareun, who's an expert on reforestation from the Royal Forest Department. Next, Mr. Sunit Setha, founder and managing director of ChangeFusion Group, and Mr. Napat Supathana Gun, Senior Vice President of Magnolia Quality Development Corporation Limited, MQDC. The discussion will be moderated by Mr. Don Ravi Varanon, Counselor at the Royal Thai Embassy in Stockholm. Thank you. Let's wait a couple of moments while our participants are returning to the conference room.
ในสคริปต์มีการแนะนำตัวอยู่แล้วไหมคะหรือว่าระหว่างนี้จะแนะนำตัวกันไปก่อนไหมคะจะได้ทำความรู้จักคุ้นเคยกันไม่ตื่นเต้นค่ะ
Anna-Lena, you have the headphone? Okay, great. Okay, you have personal interpreter. Okay, I think it's time to start this final session. It will be in Thai, actually. So you can listen to the translation via the headphone here. People start coming. But before our discussion in Thai, I just want to say something. Actually, this is a very important event. And our headline here is Redesign Sustainable Forestry. This is very meaningful because there is a word from Anna-Lena. I still note in my notebook that you mentioned that national adjustments is vital. It's very important because well, this is the Swedish model that you guys speak during the morning and afternoon session, and it is very important to translate it into Thai context. It's very important. I remember that I sat down in the cafe with Aaron, and there is a question from the floor that whether the Thai timber can be used for the CLT, cross-laminated timber, and we have never tried that before. So I talked with Aaron that yeah, we should do something because if we want to grow the forest in Thailand, we need to make it variable. And in that case, if we have technology or if we have done enough research on whether the Thai timber can be used for CLT for building construction, that would be perfect. So it's the way that we have to discuss and find the opportunities whether what we can do with the Thai timber, and in Thai context, what we can do. So this is very important, and we will discuss in intense way with our speaker here. and most of us are Thai. So I think it would be better if we discuss in Thai and we have the translation for you. So please follow our discussion. Thank you. สวัสดีครับทุกท่านครับยินดีต้อนรับกลับเข้าสู่ช่วงสุดท้าย
So welcome back everyone. This is the final session for today's event. I would like to perhaps take stock of what we have heard this morning from our Swedish colleagues. Before engaging with the panelists in our discussion, I would like to recap what we have heard this morning. We heard from our Swedish experts the gist of how can we manage our forestry sustainably, and that's the key. There's a key word I've heard. At least 3 times I have heard about this term. The important terms focuses on building the whole ecosystem, enabling all stakeholders to grow, to work together, to build the right ecosystem. Whether it's for innovation, as we all know, Sweden is great in terms of creating innovation from the ground to build it forestry and forest-related industry. Similarly, in terms of promoting innovative forestry, forest management, again, building the right ecosystem plays an important role. And I would like to divide the ecosystem into key components, namely relevant stakeholders. We have to identify who are the stakeholders in the ecosystem and what are their roles and responsibilities. And I identified 6 groups of stakeholders. First is the government, which plan, regulate, issue policies and rules to support research and development work. Somebody mentioned Winnova, which is a state-funded research institute, and it also serves as a study and research arm to help promote reforestation and forest management. So that's one key player. And the next one, of course, the private sector, who help stimulate demand for wood products in the market. With increasing demand, we can increase the supply and also come up with standards and rules for certification. Kun Tơi from MQDC perhaps represent the users. As a major real estate company in Thailand, you need to know where you can source your wood products, whether they certify, whether they meet the standards. And this morning we have heard from representative from Sura. Sura represent a local cooperative representing smallholding forest owners to work on marketing and sales. So in order to promote R&D private operators play an important role. And next, the academia. Another important players to promote R&D and disseminate knowledge to the public so that everybody recognize the importance of sustainable forest management. The next important stakeholder is the general public. They need to be engaged, they need to be involved in designing policies alongside the government agencies to avoid top-down approach. So the public and the civil sector also play an important role in providing feedback and suggestion to the government. And the next key player relate to foresters, how to grow quality trees, how to process them, and to provide the relevant industries with quality raw materials. And last but not least, small farmers, small foresters. If we empower them, enabling them to have access to financial facilities, they will be encouraged to manage the forest resources better. And so these are at least 6 group of stakeholders that I can identify from this morning presentations. On this morning we have heard a lot about how we can engage all these players in order to promote sustainable forestry concept involving small landholders and local communities. That's on the supply side. So promoting the forest industry and reforestation. And secondly, involving small forest owners that will provide raw material into the value chain. And finally, those involved in forest management that Kun Bertie talked about this morning. If we manage our well-managed forest can create more values, much more values than forests without any management at all. And then we also look at the idea of wood cities or bio-cities. Again, another approach to stimulate demand for wood products. And what Aaron discussed this morning is that the Swedish model may not be perfect from the start, because over the past 100 years they have been able to increase forest cover from 25% to 70%. They have had experience doing the right things as well as the wrong things. Previously, wood products were used mainly to produce pulp and paper, and only a certain part, only a very small percentage of wood was used in a value-added way. So they need to explore new model in order to stimulate biodiversity as well as to promote reforestation. And therefore, bio-city concept has been approaches because it also promotes the demand for a variety of wood products, and hence promoting biodiversity. Wood components that may be of low value in the past could be used, and therefore their value has been increased as a result. And so, as a result, biodiversity has been promoted alongside promotion of the agroforestry industry. So that's the recap. Now that we have heard various perspectives from our Spanish colleagues, what can we learn from their experiences? How can we adopt this idea of sustainable forestry in the Thai context? So I would like to ask the questions to all three panelists that if we want to pursue a sustainable model, as we have heard, where are we now in this journey? What are the gaps that we need to close in order to achieve better results? Let me start with Dr. Suwan. Well, directly related to this particular topic because I'm from the Royal Forestry Department. So on behalf of the responsible government agency, and I'm also personally interested in carrying out the sustainable forest management work forward. I would like to say that, in fact, we have put in place the practice of sustainable forest management, including reviving the eco landscape, both on land forest, mangroves, and the coastal forest. And in addition, we also promote commercial forests. And if you look at the acreage of economic forest, they can be promoted on land where there's land holding rights. We want to promote forest cover to 40% of the total land of the country. And the other type of land that we can promote economic or commercial forest is land under the Land Reform Office. And another type of land is land where land tax have been paid over the years. They may be located in third grade or fourth grade watersheds. So these are some of the land that we have prioritized for promoting economic forest or commercial forest lands where eucalyptus can be grown. So if you ask where we are on this journey to achieve sustainable forest management, Thailand has historically been actively involved in the production of teak wood. 50 years ago, 1960s, we received assistance from Denmark in order to promote and developed new teak varieties in Thailand. So when we talk about the teak industry, we have to have an overview of the supply chain or value chain from the upstream, midstream, and downstream. If we have a holistic view of the supply chain, at the upstream we developed new varieties and adopted the sustainable economic forest management. And in the midstream industries, we also promote processing industries. And finally, we also work very hard on expanding market opportunities. And eventually, we also need to look at or explore export markets. I also like the term from seed to wood products. And perhaps we can extend that concept from seeds to export markets, because that will serve as some incentives to farmers so that they can earn better income. Just relying on internal markets might not be enough. And when we compare that to the Swedish story, we are still trying to catch up, particularly in the development of the wood-related industries. And so I'd like to thank all our colleagues here very much to remind us of the importance of turning our cities into green area, promoting green areas in the cities, and also trying to explore the value chain with the introduction of introducing new innovative products. And I believe that colleagues here will be able to add concerning how we can stimulate demand for wood product for the real estate industry. But from the government sector, from the government side, I believe that we need to promote the use of wood materials in the government-funded construction. Thank you.
My name is Sunit from ChangeFusion. I'm not an expert on forestry or construction as such, but we do social environment innovations focusing on stakeholders engagement. I reckon we're invited to highlight certain perspective. I just want to share that I love Sweden because I used to be an exchange student in Sweden, during which I learned a lot. I went to spend time in Lund. I enjoyed caviar, the bread. But what I learned linked to today, I saw 3 or 4 key issues in Sweden. First, I saw the example about the connection between nature, urban living, and forests, that the 3 can exist, can coexist. So from 20% to 70% forest cover, that is exceptional. We can learn from Sweden. I understand Thailand's forest cover is about 30%, and it stays static there for a very long time. And there are a lot of degraded lands. Timber and forest revival are the solutions. And looking back, another thing that I'm very impressed with Sweden is decentralization, that urban, local governments have the capacity and the rights to manage resources jointly with local community, and also transparency, governance. Back to Thailand. These elements exist to some extent, but decentralization in the real sense, particularly in the last 3-4 years, is the fact that the Royal Forestry Department has promulgated the community forest law. So for the first time in the last 4 decades, people who actually live in the areas bordering national parks can now make their living legally. Because historically, at one time, Thailand tried to ban illegal logging, and so it has introduced harsh measures. And the previous king said that it's the law that encroached on people, not people encroaching the forest. So we have the Community Forest Act, and the biggest challenge for Thailand now is governance, in a sense that registration of community forests. If I'm not mistaken, I think about 4,000 community forests are registered. Now we have about 10,000 community forests. We do not have clear numbers on that classification. Most people are deprived, marginalized, poor people, and this is the main mechanism. But registration is tied with conditions that apart from verification of rights, there is the forest landscape element. They have to do a mutually acceptable forest management plan along with the decentralized provincial authority. Now they have huge capacity gaps, and therefore our partners are helping, especially with RECOFT, which is located in Kasetsart University next to the Royal Forest Department. So RECOFT work with 300 community forests to collect database on landscape, ecosystem services, biodiversity. They have done well, and these databases are open data, accessible to the public. And that project is supported by the Swedish government, I understand. So thank you, Sweden, once again. So these are amongst the critical first steps to drive things in that direction. Now with the plan, with that forest management plan, the communities have the capacity to do non-timber activities such as ecotourism or things that the law allow them to do, or partnership with private sector. But timber is such a difficult industry. Many talked about sandbox pilots. There is an existing pilot in Nan. They've registered, they're very happy. Now they are about to develop timber and logging processing involving about more than 10 steps and multi-agency, multidisciplinary, time-consuming, understandably, because it's pioneering. For this sort of thing, we need mentorship or multi-sectoral collaboration. And timbers, for example, the communities do not have the capacity. At first they thought of making choice. It's already very challenging for them, but to make it to the extent of CLT as building material, that will require a totally different level of capacity. So public-private sector led by SCG and other models of collaboration, pilot and make it successful. I think that would be a good step in the right direction. And actually there exist the potentials, and partners, multiple partners are ready, but there are gaps in know-how, capacity, demand. Apart from export, internal market. So I think we in direction. Allow me to go to Kun Napat. First of all, the and Swedish experts and SCG represent the private sector. Then from Magnus developer, we are users, buyers, we generate demand from research. I am timber usage, demand a lot for wood to be used in construction in Thailand. we're not talking about sustainability alone. Benefits of wood-based construction are many, and I will elaborate. And if demands exist, and then the difficulty we face right now is sourcing. This morning, Mr. Bertie shared very important info that out of want to be responsible developer, we cannot live with that level of waste. Now, how do we look at optimization? So, if we use something that is traceable from upstream, Forest Stewardship Council, timbers import is not the answer because of exorbitant pricing and the carbon footprints of the logistics. We do not want to use wood as gimmick. We want woods to reduce carbon footprint genuinely. So if we are to learn from the Swedish model, it's about standardization, maybe not FSC by the book, maybe we can adapt to the Thai context, but certain standards are required for buyers to feel comfortable that purchasing timbers of such and such standards, even Thai standards, then we feel comfortable about utilization. And I have hopes, I do have hopes, because it's national policy of the Prime Minister as well, his pledge of net zero emissions goal. Wood can replace concrete, and I would like to add to the ecosystem. I look at education. I talked to Ajahn Singh during lunch break, who said to me that design as a discipline, a number of disciplines are no longer part of mainstream curriculum. If we start using wood, then all the elements into the ecosystem we have to revisit, including educating Thai people and educating contractors. And if we have good partners such as Sweden, then that's encouraging. So I think we can move forward.
Thank you, Kunapat. Very interesting. And let's say we have the demand existing in the market, and how can we supply the materials to fulfill the demands? And as we've heard, in order to grow trees to serve the market demands, we may need to have a long perspective of 80 years. And then averaging the planting of trees, how many we need to plant per year. Otherwise, we will not be able to supply the market on a continuous basis, and companies like yours might find it difficult to adopt wood as building materials if we don't have a proper wood production plant in place. Let me add here. As I already mentioned, that in the supply chain from the upstream down to the downstream, there's still big gaps, and they are not fully integrated. As I mentioned, I'm aware that Magnolia has the intention to use wood if there is supply available in the market. But in the actual fact, let's look at the production of teak. For example, in Phrae or Nan provinces, many farmers, many foresters cut down their trees because they can't find a market, and so there may be needs to match suppliers and the users. So that will be a key to our success. And when we talk about certification of wood product, for example, forest certification, it's part of the forest management and COC or chain of custody. It may be certification for wood export to markets like the EU, which required it. But for domestic markets, we may not require that high level of certification. We perhaps need to know our production capacity and then link up producers with users. And the Royal Forestry Department is thinking about developing a platform whereby we can do matchmaking between producers and users, and the platform is already there running, so we perhaps need to enter more detail. Kun Sunit raised an interesting point about community forest, and Kun Suwan also talked about how can we make long-term investment in order to develop forest plantations. It's not like paddy rice farmers where farmers can generate incomes within one season. So we need to think long term. How can we promote communities and small farming families involved in plantation? So perhaps SERA is an interesting institute. It represents small foresters who come together to do marketing together. Or for example, if they lack equipment for logging or on R&D or conducting added activities, SERA can help. In Thailand, can this be one of the approach that we adopt in order to promote community forestry, and whether on the government side are you interested in promoting this idea? Kun Suwan, perhaps you can take this question. When we talk about Cooperative Light Institute, we also have that, the so-called private plantation cooperative, but it didn't make any headway. But perhaps due to a number of reasons. As you already mentioned, it takes time for the forest to grow, so you have to have the capital to invest for the long term. What is possible? Perhaps we may look at community enterprise as a model to promote among local foresters, because there are fewer restrictions, particularly in terms of regulatory requirements. So social enterprises may be a more practical model. Most of the social enterprises that we see at the moment involved agricultural production, but in terms of wood products and marketing wood products and forestry related, we haven't seen any such social enterprises being formed. Kun Sunit, you mentioned that there's various steps that community forests have to take in order to process their produce. So what do you think about SERA-like organization facilitating or helping communities to develop their product? Well, I think if we can look at the laws in order to facilitate communities moving forward on developing wood products. Let's step back. Let's communities registered to undertake teak plantations. And people may think that after 20 years they may make such a lot of profits, but in fact that did not happen at all. So we cannot undertake anything like that without developing the value chain. And community forests represent less than 6% of the land in Thailand, and land with land title deeds can be developed into commercial plantation much more easily. And for communities, if we cannot promote reforestation, the poor state of forests will not be rehabilitated. And I think that we may want to promote community enterprises or confederation of community organizations to try and promote local communities so that they can play a part in developing the value chain and complete the loop as far as developing the full-fledged ecosystem is concerned. And we need to involve both communities and government agencies to design something that will be practical and realistic. Sorry, I have to put on the mask because I just returned from Stoon province. I have been sneezing all the time. I'm not sure if it's allergy to the fine dust particle pollution or not. But when we look at sustainable forestry, it also related to sustainable marine resources management as well. There are local coastal communities that promote sustainable fishery, and they form their own associations in each coastal province, and they open their shops, retail shops, with the funding support from the European Union. So perhaps that similar model can be applied in the forestry sector, but it may be a lot more complicated and complex than promoting this value chain in the fishery sector.
Actually, we have key stakeholders here. If we get together and dialogue, I think we can lay foundation for an arrangement leading to sustainable forest management in Thailand. May I ask, ChangeFusion representative, can you share with us as platform bringing together stakeholders, use innovations, technology? Kun Sunit, when it comes to sustainable forestry, what role can ChangeFusion play to drive something similar to SERA? I want to do my best. If partners are on board, our role and other partners when it comes to forestry. And now net zero is the trend of the day, followed by carbon credits and the 100 baht carbon credits, maybe 25 baht reach the community and the rest for certification fee. Not much help. For example, aviation airlines, if they want carbon equivalent, there is certification available. So in this case, we may find partners who operate satellite imaging, such as Jetstar or Thaicom satellite operator has started doing data carbon to do carbon equivalent So these are small examples that if we want to involve private sector subscribing to certain impacts for all the ESG aspects of their business, there exists a mechanism to make it happen, to foster the type of collaboration that is hardly mentioned. Let's hear from the demand side. Kun Napat from MQTC. I looked at your slogan, for all well-beings on earth to coexist, which is a concept of bio-based cities. We need pilot model. Does MQDC have a sort of project or pilot in mind? Well, what we have in mind is exactly generating demand. Actually, we heard from Gaia Architects partners that having wood and trees give benefit to mental health beings. The dwellers and space users feel good. Being with wood makes one happier, and in a broader scale, wood-based construction, having forests in the project, add value to the project itself. Maybe at this point in time, more cost, but more value. These are examples. Apart from value adding to the project, the surrounding communities enjoy added value as well, and during economic downturn, but wood-based properties value does not sink. And at a broader scale, at a larger scale, we can talk net zero. We do climate actions. As real estate developer, we need financing. Of course, there's green financing, green fund with woods as main materials, plus other developer can enjoy cheaper cost of financing. So with these elements, not just MQDC can do it, it's the trend. It is a business case where many stakeholders can foster such demand. The ecosystem that you all talk about, we can do it straight away. At the end of this meeting, we get together and find ways to come up with sandbox, bringing experts on board. With SCG, we have SESI. We can already have the platform for collaboration. Kun Suwan would like to add something important before we run out of time. On behalf of the government, maybe our Swedish friends have been listening for a long time what the government can do to support. Having listened all day, what the timber industry wants, upstream, midstream, downstream, the kind of help they need is midstream and downstream. Midstream relating to processing, which requires know-how, marketing. We need help urgently. Yes, standards. We have TC, we have national industry standards that have been endorsed. FSC, we've done it. TICS, the forest organization, we have wood certification. If Sweden will be so kind as to buy TICS from Thailand, we are very ready to supply. And Kun Chitawat, our key experts said they want Swedish help in standard coding for different types of timber and woods that would fill the capacity gap midstream. Can I go back to the embassy as one of the organizers? Tangible outcome, not just workshop and we go home. We know, we hear commitment to further develop ecosystem for all the actors to proceed together. I feel strongly that this is the outcome of today's platform. I would like to volunteer commitment on behalf of the Royal Thai Embassy. Our function is to bridge stakeholders, actors in Thailand and Sweden together. As Kun Suwan said, if you need us to bridge with Swedish counterparts, we are ready. And so, as moderator of this session, I would like to thank you all participants, speakers, and those following us on live streaming online. We have heard impressions from the and we see the prospect for collaboration. Next, we are wrapping up. I would like to invite Kun Nithi Pattara Chod of SCG Cement Building Materials to deliver closing remarks. Good afternoon, partners, allies, participants here and online. I heard that more than 1,000 participants are following us. So on ground we have about 200, online both English and Thai channels about 700. In the afternoon I think we have more and more following us, 1,100 online. So excellent feedback. First I would like to thank you partners, particularly both the Royal Thai Embassy in Stockholm and the Swedish Embassy in Bangkok. With multiple partners, including TNIU, TMA, Eco Innovation Foundation, and SCG. I had the opportunity to visit Sweden mid last year, meeting the embassy staff, Kun Aaron. What impressed me the most is Eco Innovation's building project. All woods except foundation, which is concrete. It inspired me. It made me ask myself a question, why we don't have this in Thailand. And so I talked to Kun Aim that we should introduce this innovation, and it is happening today. So thank you, Embassy, the embassies, and all partners. this is innovation. This is counterintuitive. That cutting trees means less forest cover, but for Sweden, cutting trees, optimizing the use while increasing forest acreage. During press conference, Aaron's asked how Swedish model can be replicated in Thailand, and Aaron said in Thailand we have to use Thai model. I think this is the first key takeaway for the day. Swedish model is effective in Sweden. We need Thai context, and all of us here have to be a part of building that Thai model. And just now we heard the panelists giving us clues and thoughts for the way forward for us to collab. Second key takeaway, so far, collaboration remains important. Of course, the state sector, Royal Forestry, the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, legal, regulatory supports, private sector, demand side actors, academia. Civil society. So everybody has a role to play. And how do we achieve the synergy? To increase forest resources and grow in the rate that Sweden has achieved. So I'm very encouraged to hear that. From now on, let's get together to come up with new business models, generate demands for Thailand to harness wood products while conserving forests. Third, innovations. If we use business as usual approach, cost is high and unmarketable. What do we do to make the most of technology and innovations, to deploy tech and innovations, to develop plant varieties for wood engineering, optimizing a tree versus only 10% use of the past. So how do we capture all, optimize and upcycle? We need technology. So that's another key takeaway for us at SCG. Fourth, similar to what Kun M spoke about before, ecosystem. Change has to be system-wide. So we have no forestry as academic discipline for about 20 years. So we need to start from scratch about wood-based design, wood-based construction, forestry science. I like to share SCG's own experience. We have been working on forestry, water resources, and sustainability. We have done quarries and mines. After minings, we have to recover the forest. We found that if you don't have water all the trees in the forest die, so forest needs water. And so we have check dam reservoir projects. Now we have planted more than 1 million trees. We have built 150,000 check dams. And so when we have water, we have forests, we have moisture. So this is coexistence. And we found that we need people as well. If you have forest, water, but no human beings to take care of it, therefore community is important. So what to do for community, forest and water to coexist? So our project is from upstream watershed. We plant forests, we make check dams, we conserve rivers, and we have marine conservation as well. Mangrove forests, seagrass that absorb carbon. We have to tackle the entire chain. Sweden's ecosystem is one thing, Thailand's ecosystem is another. And we have to think about sustainability. And then from our experience, so we use technology such as drone to track, monitor forest conditions. We have eucalyptus, agroforestry. We use technology. Another important consequence is communities. Well, forests serve as livelihood source for communities, supplementing their income and reducing inequality. So having forest, water source and community and livelihood support, so that creates a sustainable ecosystem. And that's SCG's experience. And lastly, if we just go on and on, a global warming can accelerate, forest cover increase or decrease, we don't know. Illegal logging, when woods have become rare and more expensive, that's incentive for illegal logging. Of course, the government is taking care of it, but it cannot take care of the whole forest. But if forests are owned by farmers, they are the stakeholders to take great care of forests. Everybody asks us this question: what next step is? And who will do it? So I've been asked these questions a lot, but in fact the answer is easy. Next step, the next moment, the next instant. We have to do it now. We cannot say next week, next year. Whatever you have to start with, do it now. If we do nothing, things stay the same. But if we start now, we may achieve 80% forest cover like Sweden. Who will do it? If not us and those listening to us online, I don't know who else would do it. Because everybody must help giving answer. Is it government, private sector, embassies, or CSOs? So back to the first question. Everybody must start now today. So I thank you once again, all the speakers, panelists, the organizers, the Royal Thai Embassy in Stockholm, Swedish Embassy in Bangkok, all partners. I think we have a good start. We've turned a new page. It may happen or it may not happen. It's up to all of us. It's in our hand. Thank you.
ขอบพระคุณคุณนิธิภัทรโชคเป็นอย่างสูงนะคะสำหรับการกล่าว
Thank you very much, Kun Niti Patanachok, for your closing remark, and that ends our workshop today. And I hope that help inspire all of you to get involved in sustainable forest management, enable people and forests to live and coexist together. And thank you very much for your participation since this morning. There's coffee outside the room. You can continue the discussion. And Prawa from SCG, I have to say goodbye to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.